Hi, this is Brent with Sample Tools by CR2. In this video, we're going to be exploring mid-side EQ. What is it and how do we effectively use it? Now, mid-side EQ is a little bit like one of these words, this terminology that gets thrown around a lot in mixing, and I think a lot of people are confused as to what it is. And really, all it means is separating the mono information and the stereo information. But knowing when to use that is very important, and it can be really, really useful and can also help the compatibility of your mixes across a large range of playback devices. So I'm going to be using the FabFilter Pro Q3 here, and also a mastering plugin called the BX Digital version 3, and this is from Brainworks Plugin Alliance, and these are both great plugins for demonstrating how you can use mid-side EQ. So I'm going to be using mid-side EQ on my master, and I'm also going to be using it on some of the audio tracks here as well. So if we're working backwards in a top-down scenario, one of the best ways to use mid-side EQ is to enhance our mono compatibility. A lot of speakers these days, such as smart speakers, work on a mono compatibility system, and there's a lot of information that we need to get tight for those playback methods, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that the stereo image is nice and clean. So as we can see, this has a mono and a stereo section, and that basically means that this is all information that's going to be in the stereo spectrum, and this is all going to be down the center. We also have this mono maker control here, and this allows us to sum any frequencies below a desired region. I always bring this to about 100 Hz on all of my mixes. What this means is essentially all of the information that is 100 Hz or below is going to only be coming out the center of the mix. You won't get anything in the stereo field 100 Hz or below. And already this is solving problems that might occur like masking. So masking could come in when we have frequencies that are below that Hertz region, but we start to spread them into the left and the right speakers. And that can, occur more and more problems down the line, especially when we're using big plug-in chains and we're running into saturators, EQs, compressors, or maybe bringing that signal up. So something like the mono maker on the master bus is a real game changer for enhancing the compatibility across playback, and also just making it a little bit easier to mix when you're actually mixing, because now you're not fighting wars with 100 Hz and below in the stereo spectrum. So for that same reason, when we're working with the stereo section, you don't really need to be boosting much above sort of 10-20K in the mono section. So I would do the majority of that in the stereo section here. But as a rule of thumb, I like to use the mono maker and sum everything below. So we can come back to this in a second. But another thing you can do as well is you can roll off the stereo section here, and it gives us a nice visualizer as to what is changed in the stereo field. So this is our stereo vector graph and our mono vector graph. And as you can see, we've got a slope here, and we can change the slope from a 6 to a 12. And basically this just shows us that anything below 100 Hz is going to roll off in the stereo section. And likewise, we could do the same for the mono section. We could say everything from 20 Hz and above, we're going to get rid of in the mono section, because really that's the air stuff that we're talking about, and you almost don't perceive that sort of frequency region. So that's a good instance of a mastering mid-side EQ. There's a lot more we could do with that. We're just touching the surface, but I want to also show you how you can use something like a parametric equalizer, like a Pro Q3. So I've got Pro Q3 here on a drum track. So let's just solo the drum track. So if I wanted to take control of this drum track and say I want to boost some of the 60 Hz where the fundamental of the kick is, I can do that, but I can make sure that I'm just doing it for mono compatibility, because there's no reason to spread that information in the sides in the stereo image. So I'll create a point and accentuate this. So as we can see, the frequency, the fundamental is more or less 60 Hz for that kick. 58 Hz, but the current bell curve here is working in stereo. As we can see, it says stereo. So what we can do is we can select mid, and now that information is going to be selected for mono compatibility, and we can tighten that curve up and do whatever we feel is necessary when making that decision. We could maybe even make it just an actual multiband, so we're not constantly boosting, which is something that might be preferable, but all of that information is being boosted, but only in the center of the mix. And likewise with that, we can do the same for any stereo information. So if I create another point here, so this point here, I'm going to do sides, and we could do left and right. So left would obviously be the left speaker, right would be the right speaker, and stereo takes into account the entire mix. So that's what we're avoiding here. We're using mid or we're using side, and we can see the different polarity actual shapes here. So if I select side, I might want to boost stuff that's maybe a little bit higher up, sort of like 10 to 20k, to bring out some of the snap and the presence. I'll over accentuate it so we can really hear this. And again, I'll bring it down and make it a dynamic band. And let's over accentuate this even more. So we're on quite a tight meter here. If we go into 30 decibels, we're actually only really doing boosts by about 5-6 dB. While I probably wouldn't be boosting it that much, I'm using it for demonstrative purposes. You can get an idea as to why we'd use mid and side on specific channels as well as on master channels. Let's do it before and after. So here's before. Let's back off on the output a little bit. And let's have a listen to that in context with the track. And likewise, let's do the same with the BX Digital V3. And finally, like I was saying, we can take this further and we can start to do stuff like boost. So I could do like a low mid boost. I could maybe do a boost of about 1 to 2 dB with quite a wide curve. I'd say 150 or thereabouts. And likewise, I could do a top shelf at say 20k and boost this. And we're boosting that in the stereo and we're boosting this in the mono section. So I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next video.